to make the right decision and represent and allow the representation and allow trade union organisation. And that's what we're going to fight for. That's part of the fight against racism. Next, I'm going to introduce somebody who doesn't need an introduction. Just very quickly to say thank you first of all, because Zarah Sultana has represented the needs of this city more ably than any other MP I can remember, talks about the real issues that we face, including the economy, has made statements on issues like pensions that we need to hear as people working and living in this city, and has been steadfast on both international issues that affects many people in this city directly, and also on the issue of racism itself. And I think we should give Zarah a solidarity round of applause now because of the abuse that she's faced as an MP representing our city that has been totally disgusting and unacceptable. And I think we should just give her a round of applause.
I'm not so good at that, but thank you for being here and for listening to this incredible panel. I'm proud to share this platform with you and to learn from the struggles and from your expertise. This summer we will witness something that should disturb us all. Riots across the country fueled by division, hatred and fear. They were not isolated incidents, they were a warning of what happens when racism, Islamophobia and anti-migrant politics take hold. The violence that we saw was a direct result of decades of racist rhetoric, scapegoating, and the absolute desolation and devastation of our working class communities by austerity. We packed this room tonight because you all understand that we can't ignore this any longer. Racism is on the rise in the UK, and it's been normalised at the highest levels of media and politics. Yeah. The right-wing press and politicians have spent years, if not decades, demonising Muslims, migrants and people of colour, blaming them for the very problems caused by government cuts and corporate greed. From former Home Secretary Suella Braverman's hateful description of refugees as an invasion, to Nigel Farage's dangerous claims that British Muslims don't share British values, I could list all the things that he's done from the 2016 EU referendum and the poster he stood in front of. This racist rhetoric is sowing fear and division. I'm not sure if anyone in the room has missed it, but there's a Tory leadership race going on where they're all be trying to out-Enoch each other. The two leadership candidates, the two finalists, Kenny Badenoch and Robert Jenrick, also have a long track record of Islamophobic remarks. During Zach Goldsmith's Islamophobic notorious 2016 campaign to be Mayor of London, Kenny said, "Why should Sadiq Khan get a free pass from hanging out with extremists just because he's Muslim?" She set out her leadership stall for this race, saying that independent MPs were elected thanks to sectarian politics and alien ideas, and then in another interview remarked that not all cultures are equally valid. These aren't even racist dog whistles, they are a racist foghorn. During the riots this summer, for a long time she actually stayed silent. Then she intervened with a robust defence of far-right Islamophobe Douglas Murray, a friend of Tommy Robinson's, after a video emerged in which Murray had called for an attack on migrant communities in the UK, which dated prior to the riots, but she referenced it a week after the riots had taken place. Early this year, Robert Jenrick, who has more lobbying scandals than I have time tonight to mention, defended then Tory MP 30p Lee Anderson when he said, this is Jenrick, who said Lee is not an Islamophobe after Anderson declared that Islamists control London and Sadiq Khan, and we're talking about the He set out his leadership pitch in The Guardian, blaming Eastern European immigrants for a direct impact on the wages, terms and conditions of too many people. Now, he's far from the only Labour figure to echo right-wing talking points. I don't know how many people in this room remember former leader of the House of Commons, Jack Straw, who refused to meet veiled Muslim women back in 2006. And there's one MP, former MP, who keeps being on the media talking about the election that he lost, John Ashworth, who claimed that asylum seekers can stay in hotels for the rest of their lives, which is just absolutely unacceptable. So this is what I mean when I say much of Britain's political and media class are complicit in the racism, Islamophobia and anti-migrant violence we saw. From those who target Muslims and migrants with rabid enthusiasm to those who fail to combat and are complicit in right-wing narratives. They are responsible for where we are now. Racist rights and all lies with this class. And it's no mystery why this class, the political media class, failed this test. Because when public services are decimated and living standards are taking the biggest hit on record, people in positions of power play divide and rule, like others have commented on the panel, to maintain their privilege. And therefore, we know that this is not erupt out of nowhere. It's a culmination of a long, deliberate campaign to divide us, working class people pitched against each other, communities fractured on racial lines, and migrants scapegoated for economic hardship they had no part in creating. As socialists, as trade unionists, we know better. We know that the real cause of poverty and inequality isn't migration or multiculturalism, but a system that exploits every single one of us. It's austerity, it's the deliberate underfunding of public services. Condemn racism. We have to actively fight against it. We must build that movement that is not only anti-racist but rooted in solidarity between all working people, no matter their race, religion, or background. And that fight against racism is the fight for economic and environmental justice. That fight is for migrants' rights and workers' rights, knowing that our struggles are interconnected and we will not win without one another. So when the far right targets migrants and minorities, we must defend them. That's what we saw in the streets of the UK when trade unionists and community groups put out a call. That's what defeated what we saw was happening at the time. When governments push through austerity policies that deepen poverty, we must speak out and we must resist. And that's why it's so imperative to scrap the cruel and pernicious two-child benefit cap. Disastrous means testing of winter fuel payments, which leaves pensioners struggling to keep their homes whilst the wealthiest in society benefit from government handouts. No one in this country should have to make these difficult decisions, tough decisions. They're not tough for politicians, they're tough for people who are making decisions between heating and eating. And no one should freeze because of arbitrary bureaucratic decisions. So when we see these policies, and as someone who was fundamentally politicized and saw austerity destroy our communities, I cannot let that happen. a narrative that treats them less worthy of protection and treats them less deserving of peace. We cannot remain silent while government enables these atrocities, and I've always said, whether it's voting against winter fuel allowance, whether it's voting to scrap the child benefit cap, that politics is about people's lives. It is not about political gains. And that's why we must take this fight seriously. We cannot allow our communities to be torn apart by racism, Islamophobia, or anti-migrant sentiment. We must show everyone that the real enemies are those who push austerity and profit from division, because the real enemy of the working class travels by private jet, not migrant dignity. Reject the politics of division, whether it comes in the form of racist violence on the street or dog whistle racism of politicians. It is incumbent on all of us to build that diverse, multi-racial working class movement that fights for us all, because in strength lies our unity. So I strongly urge everyone who can to attend the march on the 26th of October. Ultimately, we are at a crossroads. Will we allow racism? Will we allow austerity? Will we allow the far right to dictate our future? Or will we choose a path of solidarity and justice? The choice is ours. As socialists, as trade unionists, we have to fight for a better future. We have no choice. A future where no one is left behind, where no child grows up in poverty, where no pensioner freezes in their home, and no one is judged or escaped